Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to be talking to you about the true cost of makeup. How much does it really cost to make the makeup that we walk into Sephora, we walk into a drugstore, and we see marked up to much higher prices than it really costs. This is going to be a series where I'm going to talk to you guys about all kinds of different parts of this. But in this specific video, I want to focus on the true cost of the makeup itself, and then in some future videos in this series, we'll talk about, why it is that beauty gurus get paid ridiculous sums of money to do sponsored videos, why it is that James Charles is complaining that $50,000 isn't enough for a video, that kind of thing. I think it's going to be a real interesting series, and it's a lot of stuff that's really been on my mind. This information has kind of been a little bit hush-hush, but it's not really impossible to find. There's a standard in the business world of what you mark up everything. So this video is really, it's about makeup, but it's also about everything you can walk into Walmart and buy. And I think sometimes it's just so jarring to us because we kind of have a little bit of a disconnect in terms of kind of seeing the world through math. So don't click away just because I said the word math. We are definitely going to be doing some math today, but I think it's going to be really interesting, and I think that if you stick with it, it'll give you a better perspective of, what this really costs and how it's affecting us, and real importantly, especially in a future video, we'll talk about how to prevent yourself from ending up in debt over a hobby like makeup. So the foundation to the video that we're about to talk about today is this idea that everything that you will ever buy from a store is marked up around 80 to 90% of the cost. Now, I kind of tend to think that that's a bit of an inflated cost, but I assume that it also factors in paying employees or advertising, sending out PR, everything like that. But it's kind of jarring sometimes to tell people even a 10 to 20% figure. You take a mascara like this one, which retails for I think around $10, and you say, well, it only cost between $1 to $2 to make. I think that people kind of have this inclination to not believe that. How can it actually be so cheap? So to tell you guys about this, I want to give you an example that I think will be a little more relatable than the numbers that I'm about to follow this with. So in my little illustration, let's just imagine that you are an artist and you are painting a painting, and it takes you 10 hours from start to finish to make this painting. Now you've done the math and you've realized that you need to make at least $10 an hour in order to live. I think that's pretty feasible. Most of us can imagine living off that, even if you're probably going to struggle a little on that type of an income. So the artist takes their painting and they attempt to sell it. And of course, in order to get back 10 an hour, given that they worked on this for 10 hours, they need to sell their painting for $100. Now the problem here is that when they take this to market, people are going to look at that painting and say, are you serious? You want $100 for that? Where's my artist to attest to how this goes? And people are going to say, no, I'll give you 20 for that. That's only worth 20. And so the artist is stuck with this painting and isn't sure what to do. So at this point they decide, okay, I'm going to make some prints of it. I'm going to essentially copy the painting that I made and make 10 prints. Well, at this point they only need to sell each of their prints for $10 in order to get the money that they feel they need to live. So imagine instead that they take this painting and they copy it 100 times. Now they only need to sell each of the prints for $1 in order to recover all the costs that they need. And the funny thing about this is, remember that I said when they took it to market, people thought $100 was ridiculous. Well, what's funny about this is that $1 for a print is ridiculously cheap. And at this point, if this artist takes their prints out to market, people are going to say, $1? Are you kidding? I'll buy 10. So now it's more beneficial for the artist to actually go ahead and mark up the price of those prints and sell every one of them for $5, now giving themselves $500 instead of their original $100. So the whole point here is that when the artist made multiples and made more and more, they went from making hopefully an income of $10 an hour to easily making an income of $50 an hour. And that's the principle for drugstore. The biggest trick to drugstores, and this isn't any kind of sneaky thing, but what they do is they make so much larger quantities than higher end products. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of every drugstore product that is released. So this is where it gets so interesting, because I think, it's so hard for us to kind of wrap our heads around numbers, but if you're able to, then it makes perfect sense why a $10 mascara can actually profit a company more than a $24 mascara. And that's what's so interesting about Drugstore is Drugstore products ultimately make more in profit than higher end companies. There's one other reason why drugstore products are able to be priced so low, and that is the packaging. I think that we don't always realize just how much we're paying for packaging when we buy makeup as opposed to the actual formula itself. It's a factor, but we really pay for packaging. So here's an e.l.f. eyeliner that retails for $2 and it's in very standard packaging, and here's a pretty vulgar eyeliner that retails for, I believe, $22, $24, and you can see that this packaging was not something that Pretty Vulgar was able to, easily purchase and just print on. Instead, they had to custom make this. They had to find a factory who would be willing to do this design, to come up with the design. It ends up being a huge part of the price. What I want to do next is walk you through how this primer is able to be sold for $6. Again, remember that I'm saying somewhere between 10 to 20% is the standard price of what this is supposed to cost, but I think you're going to be a little mind blown when you find out how much the product itself inside, the actual primer in here, costs. So the first step in order to make a cosmetic product is that you need to have a chemist come up with a good formula that's really going to work, to deliver what customers want, and you can bet you're going to pay around $3,000 at least in order to get that formula. So in order to make this primer, first off, we're going to pay $3,000 for our chemist. I went ahead and took a look at the ingredients to this, and it's pretty much entirely silicones, which is funny because that actually means that this is one of few products where water's not actually the first ingredient. So, okay, maybe we think this is going to cost a little more. So I figured, let's take the first ingredient from this formula, which is cyclopentasiloxane, and let's find somebody willing to sell us a wholesale quantity of cyclopentasiloxane. I went on Alibaba and I found somebody selling a ton of cyclopentasiloxane for $5,100. Now a ton is 2,000 pounds, which means we can make 64,000 bottles from that ton. So our main ingredient in here, the silicone that is in this primer, is going to cost $2.55 a pound, which translates to 16 cents for an ounce, or if you really want to know how much it costs for the formula in here, it is 8 cents. For the half ounce that is in this container. 8 cents. Now see, the problem with saying that is that even though we've determined that it's roughly 8 cents for the cost of this primer, how are we going to give it to you if we don't have packaging? So I went on a cosmetic wholesale website and managed to find what looks like pretty much this exact same pump system for $1.70 per bottle. But when you start getting into mass quantities, that price goes down and down. So we see here that if you buy 20,000 of these, it is only 89 cents for the bottle. Because we're buying 64,000, because we're going to make 64,000 of these primer, I expect us to get a much better discount, and that's a big part of business that you really have to know, is that companies are definitely making agreements with manufacturers, with wholesalers, with even USPS and UPS to get your mail to you cheaper. So these prices, again, are still a little bit inflated over what the price would actually be. But let's go with it. Now, in order for us to buy these 64,000 bottles, remember that we paid $5,100 for the formula itself. The cost of the bottles at 89 cents is $56,960. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and nobody seems to believe me, but most of what you pay for with your makeup is the packaging. It is the biggest cost. Right now, when it comes to e.l.f., they also tend to sell their products in boxes. So I looked up the cost of 64,000 boxes that would already come pre-printed, and we can estimate it's going to cost around 15 cents for each box. So there's $9,600 for the boxes. The grand total for creating 64,000 bottles of this primer comes to $74,660, which means that the cost of each bottle is $1.16, exactly within that 10 to 20% that we discussed. And again, remember that my numbers are numbers that I was able to get. This is without any kind of a business agreement. If I wanted to go spend $75,000 to make this primer, I could do it. which gives us ultimately a $4.84 profit, meaning that if Elf sold every one of these 64,000 bottles, they have made 309,760 cents in pure profit. Now, I know that 64,000 bottles sounds like it's a lot, but realistically, Elf has made and sold so many more than 64,000 bottles. If you just take as an example, the population of New York is around 9 million, and that is one city. So hopefully that kind of puts into perspective the amount of bottles that are sold. It's really not unrealistic to imagine that Elf has probably sold more like 1 million bottles of this. Again, I know this is a huge number, but that's not an unrealistic expectation, which at that point would mean that they've made $4,800,000 in profit. This is why we're actually seeing such a big shift from products being released as mid-range to the drugstore growing and growing. It really does have to do with this quantity. So I don't want to start this series with a long video. I just kind of want to spark your interest, and hopefully you will stay for more videos on this topic. I just think it's really fascinating to think about what kind of profit margins there are in cosmetics. I'm really fascinated with the economics and finance side of things because I think that it is just so much bigger than most people realize. And one thing I really do want to recommend to you guys, I'm going to link a video below on understanding just how much $1 billion is, because, you know, that's a big number to throw at us, and I don't think it's very easy to really digest what $1 billion means. But again, the cosmetic industry is worth multi-billions of dollars. I guess my point in doing this video series is that as we are a part of the beauty sphere, I think that we kind of deserve to know just a little bit more than we do. But I guess I'm not always sure of how companies would feel to have you know that, you know, the actual value of what you pay for is pennies. It's the packaging. So I hope this sparked your interest, and I hope that you guys stay for the rest of the series. Make sure that you are subscribed and give this video a like if you did like it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, YouTube.